Welcome to The Gateway, your compass through the magical waters of spirit communication, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. Tonight I have a special guest on. Her name is Katie McVay, and she's of Tamerlane Media. She's going to discuss energy fields and spirits and Reiki and all of that good stuff. We're going down a rabbit hole today.
Sure.
Have you ever wondered about how your energy can affect ghosts and vice versa? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi, CL. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about going down this hole, aren't you?
I definitely am. It's I think because we're both fellow ghost hunters and healers in our own rights. So it's a good combination to really dive into. And yeah, the rabbit holes are welcome.
So it sounds like we're a little bit different though than your typical ghost investigator out there. So I know for me, I've been in a paranormal since I was very young. I had my first experience at like 2 and 3 years old. My earliest memories was of seeing ghosts in my room. So for me, I know it exists. I know the point of paranormal investigators out there is to prove if there is paranormal or not, or sometimes if there's an afterlife or not. For me, it already exists. So my idea of paranormal investigating is kind of the opposite, I guess, of what paranormal investigators do. I want to know what comes next. How do we communicate with that other side? And what does that mean in our everyday lives? What is it like for you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I had my first paranormal experience a little bit later than you did. I was a teenager and I was 16. And I was instantly fascinated by the paranormal. So I've been a researcher ever since and a ghost hunter for 3 or 4 years now. But I feel the same way. And I think at the heart of it, that's what we're doing when we're ghost hunting, right? We tell ourselves when we whip out all the fancy equipment with the bells and the whistles that we're going to catch evidence. But at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is what comes next. And I think those are some of the questions we ask, when we want to capture EVPs and we want to hear voices, we're kind of asking them, where are you? What are you doing? Can you see us? And some of the questions that we ask kind of do dive into that, into what is the afterlife? Does it exist? So I think you're absolutely right that the initial question is, okay, does it exist? But what's next?
What's next? Yeah. How does that affect our lives today? And when we talk about energy fields, how are we affected by them and can we affect them? So there's a lot of questions. We'll get into all that. But Katie, to start off, how did you get into Reiki and energy healing in the paranormal?
Well, my years of being a ghost hunter, paranormal investigator actually predate me being a Reiki practitioner. So like I mentioned, I've been a fiend, so to speak, of the paranormal for 30 plus years. And about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with 2 very rare autoimmune diseases and a very rare lung disease. And I found myself in a very dark place. And I think a lot of people will probably be able to identify with that because I feel like a lot of people who are paranormal investigators who have spiritual awakenings, have the dark night of the soul experience, usually is born out of some kind of illness, disease, or loss. And that's exactly the path that I took. So about 2 years ago, I was very physically ill. And I didn't really tell anybody. I kind of ignored the symptoms. I didn't really say anything to anybody. And because it's inconvenient, being sick is very inconvenient. I wanted to continue ghost hunting and I had things on this earth that I wanted to do. And having that spiritual awakening, I was just discovering what it is I was put on this earth to do. And then boom, I got sick. So I pushed through and I powered through as much as I could and went down the traditional medical route. I was very fortunate and very blessed in that I found some very good care. I have a very good care team that's looking after me and watching over me. And now I can say now that my diseases are in remission after lots of hard work.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it took a lot of hard work, a lot of hard-headedness, but I got there. But at the same time, when I was kind of navigating the medical field and the vagaries of all of that with doctors and hospitals and specialists, I really wanted to take a two-prong approach. Of course, I wanted to go down the medical route and get the pharmaceuticals and the rehabilitation that I needed. But I was also a spiritual being, and I was coming into my spirituality. So I was looking for some kind of healing modality that could also help me physically and emotionally. And so I explored lots of different avenues, a lot of avenues that your listeners are probably familiar with, Reiki, acupuncture, Tai Chi, Qigong, those kinds of healing, crystal healing. And I just kind of gravitated towards Reiki for whatever reason. And I found a local practitioner, and her and I just hit it off. And I mean to tell you, CL, after my first session, I remember hopping off that table feeling mentally and emotionally better than I had in years. And then the second part of it was not only did I feel fabulous, but I realized that that was part of my journey and part of what I was put on this earth to do. So it was almost like I got sick for a reason, to find out what my purpose was. And part of that purpose was to then go and heal other people. So I never took the victim route and said, "Oh, woe is me. I'm really ill. I'm really sick." I saw it as a blessing because it led me to where I am today. I'm a Reiki master, and I'm helping other people heal. So that's kind of how I came into Reiki. And it's been a blessing, and it's been a great thing in my life.
It's interesting you said that about the paranormal field in general, that people usually experience some kind of dark night of the soul. And probably 9 out of 10 people that you meet in the paranormal field have gone through some sort of trauma in their life. And it's the case with mediumship. A lot of people whose abilities are woken up have come from some kind of drama in their life, whether it's a death in a family, a death of someone close to them. It could be some kind of illness. It could be like an accident, like a car wreck. It's across the board, but 9 out of 10 times somebody has experienced some kind of trauma that brought it out. For me, I don't know, being so young, I'm not exactly sure what the trauma was. I didn't have the greatest childhood life, I guess, growing up with my parents. It was a very broken home that I was in. But that said, I did have cancer when I was in college. So stage 2 throat cancer. I survived
Wow.
that. But when you're 29 and you're diagnosed with something like that, it's kind of like, gosh, what do you do, right? So that kind of woke up a lot in me internally. And then at the same time, I also lived in a haunted house that really brought it out.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I do meet a lot of younger people who are being diagnosed with diseases. So it kind of goes back to what you were saying, how it all just kind of depends on when you're awoken,
Yeah,
and so the fact that you were diagnosed with cancer at such a young age, which, congrats, you got through that, and you look fabulous.
thank you.
That's awesome. So yeah, I'm finding a lot of young people, and I think it's maybe because people are starting to find their calling at younger and younger ages, and so they have to have that trauma and that drama that happens to them at an early age for them to really recognize what their purpose is.
Mhm.
And you're right, the fact that you grew up in a haunted house too. My gosh.
No, I didn't grow up in the haunted house. It was, when I lived in Nashville, I experienced, um, a haunted situation that I was in. It was
Oh,
terrible, yeah.
okay.
So,
That's interesting. Yeah. But you're right. I don't think, and you probably feel the same way. I haven't met too many ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, you're right, that have not had some kind of trauma, drama. And that's not to say we're the only ones. Of course, everybody
yeah.
does. You're human. If you have a meat suit, you have problems, right?
Yeah, something
Um,
happened to you at some point.
Right. But I think that's what kind of bonds us, as ghost hunters. And I think that's why we're close knit as a group and as a community, because of that. I hate to say shared trauma. Um,
Yeah.
that's certainly a part of it, but it's also, that we love ghosts too. So there's that aspect of it too.
Well, I think it wakes you up to the other side. It's like death all of a sudden looks in your face, and so you're just awake to it.
Hmm.
Whereas most people who don't experience anything like that, you know, they just go about their daily life and never have to think about it,
Right.
which I don't know. Sounds kind of fantastic to me, but
Right.
so you went on to start the Tamerlane Media. What is
Mhm.
that about?
So I got some guidance back in the late fall of last year, to combine my three loves, which is writing, Reiki, and ghost hunting. And those are my three biggest passions. A lot of people know me as the Poe geek. You can see I have my Poe stuff. Um, so they know me as a Poe geek, and they don't really know, and they know me as the Poe geek who loves ghost hunting, but they don't really know that writing actually predates everything. I've been writing since I was 8 years old, and it's my first love. I was an English major in college. I've been writing for a very young age, and so I just kind of got guidance from the universe to start my own business in order to combine those three loves of writing, Reiki, and ghost hunting. So that's what Tamerlane is all about. And some people hear the word Tamerlane and they're like, what is that? What is Tamerlane? So Tamerlane is a reference to Poe. Um, of course, because I love Poe so much, I had to name my company after a reference to Poe. And Tamerlane is actually the name of his first book of poetry that he published at the tender age of 18, and way back in 1827. He self-published his own poetry. So if you think about it, he was self-publishing before self-publishing was popular. He was doing that nearly 200 years ago, and so that was kind of an influence for me. So I decided to um, name my company after him.
Bull, and do you think he was haunted in his life?
Do I think Poe was haunted in his life?
Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah, in more ways than one. I think he had such a devastating life. If anyone, and I think even if you're not a Poe fan, you've heard of Poe, and you hear the tropes of Poe and the negative things that have happened to him. So yeah, I think he was definitely a haunted man. He experienced a lot of death in his life, experienced a lot of death early in his life that haunted him. He had a lot of negative relationships in his life. He had a lot of financial failures, commercial failures, professional failures, personal failures, and I think all of those things really did haunt him. So that is a big theme that runs through. It's a big vein that runs through all of his work is things that are haunted. And yeah, absolutely, he was a haunted man.
so one of my favorite people says hello. It's Betsy Williams. I'm sure have you heard her yet?
Oh
Have you met
yeah,
her on
yeah.
social media yet?
I think we
She's
just recently became friends on Facebook. Hi, Betsy.
she's a very sweet girl, but she says
Oh,
hello.
hi.
So she's listening out there. But I
Awesome.
think a lot of people out there don't. Again, we talked about this earlier before we started our discussion. The paranormal investigators, you know, they're out there to prove life after death, and they don't really think that Reiki and healing energy is anything part of the paranormal. How do
Mm.
they overlap?
Well, here's the funny thing. It requires a bit of a story first before I answer it, and the story is something that your listeners will identify with, which is the paranormal hangover. Any ghost hunter worth their salt has a good old fashioned paranormal hangover when they're done an investigation, and it's just part and parcel of what we do, and it's just something that we come to accept that's going to happen. And that's usually because of lack of sleep and all the energy that we're giving out, all the energy that we're absorbing, fatigue, and just feeling that malaise of a paranormal hangover. And it's just something that we accept as fact. And we're like, okay, well, that's worth the possible rewards of ghost hunting. So then when I shifted into Reiki, I really took a step back from ghost hunting because not once when I was either giving or receiving Reiki did I have a Reiki hangover. I was never tired or fatigued. I always felt uplifted and I always felt better. And so I kind of had a crisis of conscience, to be honest with you. And I thought, how can I continue ghost hunting and continue having these awful paranormal hangovers And then on the other hand, have, Reiki, where you're dealing with higher level entities and healed energies. How can those two coexist for me? And so I had a bit of a crisis. And how can I ghost hunt and deal with these earthbound spirits who aren't healed, who refuse to move on? They're stuck for whatever reason, or they choose to not move on. And that's what's affecting us when we ghost hunt, when we come in contact with them. But on the other hand, when you're dealing with Reiki, you're dealing with a pure energy, and they're healed, and you're dealing with archangels and ascended masters and Reiki masters who are there to help you. And so I had a bit of a crisis of conscience. So that's the story. So how I reconciled it, to answer your question, was that we can help through energy healing. We can help those energies, right? So if we go into a haunted location where we encounter, or we know that there are earthbound spirits and they refuse to move on, they're stuck, or however you want to use that terminology, we can help them. We can heal them, and we can help release them and help them pass over and cross over, so that they're not stuck anymore. If because I believe they have free will too, just as much as us, energies in meat suits, we
Mhm.
have free will. They also have free will. So if they want to, and they're willing to, we can cross them over. And I think that's the crossover, right? So we can go into a haunted location where there are spirits, and if they're willing to and they want to, we can help cross them over using, Reiki as a tool to do that.
It's, that's really interesting, and I know a lot of listeners are out there probably going, "Oh, well, we really can't cross people over, and spirits aren't really stuck." Yeah, I kinda think they might not necessarily be stuck in that they can't move on, like something's physically holding them there. I think it's more of a mental and spiritual thing. If you've ever been depressed, um, I know I've been depressed before and dealt with depression for a long time. It could make you feel like you're stuck. You don't see
Mm,
anything else but your problems, right?
right.
So when somebody is so despondent like that, yeah, they could be stuck. So Reiki, if you're using that kind of healing energy and you're going in, I think you're more or less trying to wake them up,
Yeah.
to let them know that, hey, this is no longer your life. You shouldn't be concerned with this anymore. You can move on. Or
Mhm.
this aspect of your life, what did you learn from it? You can move on. You don't have to stay here and fret about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one thing to you can have the best of intentions, and you can say to a spirit, again, if they're willing to move on, to cross them over. However, if you I me personally, think that if you use an energy healing like a Reiki energy, they're going to feel so good, and they're going to feel so healed, that they're going to want to move on. And one very good example of that is spirit attachments. We talk about that a lot
Mhm.
in the paranormal world. I know that I've been to two locations where I came home and I didn't identify, didn't recognize at the time, because I was kind of wet behind the ears as a ghost hunter at that time. And there were two separate locations where I was going through a dark period, and I was unhealed. And so I had attachments, and I came home with attachments, and they were nasty. And had I known, and had I been a Reiki practitioner at the time, I could have healed myself and healed the spirit that was attached to me to help it move on. Um, so energy healing, as far as spirits and ghosts are concerned, are especially effective when you have personal energy attachments on you. You can help heal that energy to the point where it feels so good it wants to move on, because you show it the light, you show it how beautiful Reiki energy can be, and it feels that, and it wants to heal, and it wants to move on. And at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because at the same time, you're also healing yourself. You're healing the part of you that was damaged and traumatized, that allowed that energy to attach itself to you in the first place. So that's a really good example of the crossover that we were talking about between paranormal and Reiki energy healing.
Katie, is there a difference between human entities that are negative and maybe something that's not human, like elementals, or maybe, I don't want to say the demon world because, that's such a, but they're out there too, but
Mm,
you know what I mean. So
yeah.
is there a difference?
I'm probably not the best person to ask that. I can certainly give you my personal opinion. Yes, I do. I've been in And the majority of the places that I have gone ghost hunting have been human entities. There was one place that I went to about a year and a half ago that I feel had elemental spirits there. Have I encountered anything particularly mean or nasty? No, but I think they exist. Yeah, I won't use the D word either, but I do believe in human and non-human entities, and I believe in human and non-human attachments. I do believe that you can leave a haunted location and bring a haunted entity or spirit home with you, and it could also be, I think anything can attach to you, whether it's
Mhm.
human or non-human. But I do believe, me personally, I do believe in lots of different spirits, human and non-human spirits and energies and entities.
Some of the most haunted locations are places in which high emotions of some sort played out, like churches, for instance.
Mm.
Churches are always the most haunted, but and I used to ask the question why, but then I think it was Shane Pittman that told me, well, think about it. Everyone goes there and leaves their problems there, right?
Mm.
It's so true. Are these places really haunted by lost souls, or is it just the energy of emotions left over in some of these places?
All the above, all the above. And yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. It's kind of ironic to get back to that question you asked about churches. You think it's very ironic. You're like, yeah, how could a church be haunted? A church is supposed to be a safe haven where you go to seek refuge for
Mhm.
your issues and your problems. But you're right. What do people do when they go to church? They go to confession, and a lot of me, a lot of they're confessing a lot of dark stuff. You're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think that any place you could go to the grocery store and pick up a spirit attachment, and there could be human and energies there. There could be non-human energies there. I don't think you could go anywhere in the world. It could be a haunted church, a haunted graveyard, a haunted grocery store, and you will encounter any type of energy. And it could be something that's earthbound. It could be some kind of imprint. I also believe in imprints. I believe in energies that are left behind by other people. I also believe that we personally leave pieces of our own energetic self behind everywhere that we go, whether we realize it or not. And so as Reiki practitioners, we're very cognizant of that, and we try very hard to raise our vibration and all that good woo woo stuff, right?
Right.
To make sure that the energy that we leave behind is positive energy, and not any kind of negative, like a low vibration energy. So yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, I believe that in human spirits can be left behind, imprints. We leave pieces of ourself behind. Energy is energy, and it can come from. And I know you believe this. Energy is everywhere, and
Mhm.
everything is made of energy. So it makes sense that there's all types of energies floating out there.
I was in a case probably about 10 years ago now, and it was in a little itty bitty town called Camden, Tennessee,
Hmm.
and it was a little, African American church, and it was in the middle of it was like one of those really small Baptist, Black churches, and I got the call because the minister said that it was haunted, and he wanted I had a little team at the time, he wanted us to come out and take a look. So, I go out, and this place, it was really, really negative. It was such a negative
Hmm.
haunting there, and even there was a little cemetery, on the grounds too, and I think I think there was a couple of slave graves there. It was that old, this church. It was, like, from plantation era days, and this is in Tennessee, of course. A couple of the graves had actual brick dust around them to try to because they thought that that energy was affecting the church somehow, so they put brick it was like a voodoo thing in Tennessee, they were putting brick dust around specific graves to try to keep the spirit in that grave.
Okay.
I don't know what made me think of that, but
Oh, that's cool. I had never heard of that. But so to kind of to trap the spirit, for lack of
yeah,
a better word.
so they use the brick dust kind of like you would use, I guess salt or
Salt.
sage, you know
Yeah.
how they,
Okay.
I saw it at Zach Bagans' museum, actually. He has that divot box surrounded by, I think it's salt and sage, and it's supposed to keep that spirit from being able to cross over that boundary. Well, they were doing the same thing with brick dust. I don't know
Interesting.
why they used brick dust, but they did.
Huh. Yeah, that'd be interesting to that's an interesting rabbit hole to go down to find out that, where that originates from. Because I think
Oh,
you mentioned voodoo or something. I don't know. That's interesting.
yeah, it's a really old, old church. I think it was started early 1800s,
Okay.
but it's been there for a really long time, and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know how
some
much
of
of that carried over, but the church itself, yeah, that place was so haunted. We were there for maybe the first 5 minutes and caught a ton of EVPs, the doors slammed, all kinds of stuff. It was
wow.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, again, when you think of churches, you don't think of that negative energy, but I think when you have that history there, when you're dealing with the African American experience and especially slavery, that kind of takes things to
Mhm.
a new emotional heightened level. So yeah, I'm not surprised then that you encountered a lot of what I would consider a lower vibrational energies, that were just probably still angry and upset about their lot in life and maybe they haven't moved on. So I'll have to Google that and check that out.
Yeah, have you ever experienced any kind of hauntings in churches that are supposed to be holy ground like that?
No, the only one I'm trying to think. I'm sure I have, and I don't realize, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I've been into a lot of churches. Most of them are older. Like I've been to Ireland and to England and to Wales. So I've done a lot of UK travel. And so, of course, can I think of any of the churches off the top of my head? No, I can't. But I know you've traveled to that part of the world as well. And of course, those churches, my gosh, you want to talk about old. We think 1800s is old. No. These are hundreds and hundreds of years older, so
Right,
they have a lot more history. So yeah, I've been in a lot of churches that are hundreds of years old that are supposedly haunted. But still, it's you don't expect it from a
right.
church. And I think that's something we need to explore. We need to explore that more. I think you really went down a really interesting rabbit hole.
Well, it's true. It seems like the more I look at the church set, like even in Virginia City, there's a Catholic church there. I
Mm,
think it's called Mary of the Mountains, maybe, but that place is haunted even.
yeah.
It's just church after church I keep coming across have these. I don't want to say demonic hauntings, maybe like poltergeist. I'll use that term, poltergeist
Okay.
like activity. And there's even the castles that you mentioned, a lot of them will have chapels in them.
Mm,
The one that comes to mind that I've been to recently was Huska Castle, and that has a chapel in it. And that castle was built to keep whatever was making the town sick in. They thought that demons were coming out of this well that's there. It's like a natural spring. They thought that, well, the water was making them sick, obviously. There was something, whatever waterborne illnesses, I forget all the names of those right now, but you get the
mm,
idea.
right.
So what they did was they built Huska Castle to keep the demons in, but that place is one of the most haunted places I've ever been in, and that's supposed to be like a holy sanctuary.
Right. Yeah, it makes you wonder. And as you were talking, I was thinking if the spirits that we find in these churches, these holy places, if they post date the church itself, if there are lower vibrational energies that are unhealed that need healing, and they're like, oh, look, a church. And so maybe they're attracted to the church. They're a different type of spirit from a different time period. And they're like, oh, look, a church. I can go there and get healed and ascend and release myself and cross over. It makes you wonder if maybe there's some of that going on as
That
well.
totally makes sense.
Yeah, I know I would. If I was stuck here, yeah, that would probably be the first place I would want to go to. I want to go to a church and seek refuge and be like, hey, I don't want to be stuck here on earth anymore. Can I go, please? That's probably one of the first places I would seek out as a church.
So when it comes to the things like depression, illnesses, do spirits in the afterlife still carry these emotions around? And can our own energy get affected by that?
I think so. It remains to be seen if they can feel physical pain, and that's a conversation I'd like to have because I don't know if you've ever had that conversation with any paranormal investigators. I do think that they feel emotional pain and mental pain, and I think that's partially why they're still here on Earth and why they don't cross over because they still have, what they consider to be unfinished business, and they're not healed, and emotions that are keeping them stuck. Physical pain, I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I'd like to explore that a little bit to see if can they feel pain? If you don't have a meat suit, and I keep on referring to meat suit, but if they're just a free floating energy in a spirit, can they still feel pain? Physical pain, I don't know. Um, but emotional pain, absolutely. Mental pain and anguish, absolutely they can, because I think that's why they're still here, and that's why they're still earthbound, and they're still stuck and not wanting to cross over. Maybe they're stuck in that pattern, like you had mentioned earlier about depression. Sometimes you feel stuck when you're in depression, and you don't see a way out. And I think that that's just a universal theme, whether you're a human or you're a free floating energy, and who isn't healed, or if you're earthbound. And I think that's just a universal experience, regardless of what kind of energy that you are.
It's interesting that you said you'd like to test a theory about if ghosts can feel physical pain. When you
Hmm.
look at the phantom limb theory, when
Yeah.
someone loses a limb, they'll still feel the pain from that years later. I wonder if it's kind of something similar.
That's an
Yeah.
excellent point. Yeah, you're right, 'cause I know, a lot of veterans you hear that have the phantom limb, syndrome, and I think and I hope I'm calling that correct. I don't if it's a syndrome or what, but, yeah, you're right, and that there's, like, this invisible pain, if that makes sense, is kinda how I've heard it described. So you're right, and that's a definite, avenue to explore if what energies feels more of a phantom, no pun intended, right? A phantom pain, physical pain that they're feeling. That's interesting. I don't know how we would test that though, CL. I would love to be able to test that, but, um,
I don't know
unless
how
we
you would
ask
test that
them.
either, unless you ask them out right out, but
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I feel like they're only allowed to tell you little bits and pieces. They never really tell you the full story, and that's another thing I
Mm,
don't understand about the spirit world. Like, even with mediumship, when I'm sitting with anybody trying to do spirit or any of that kind of stuff, or I go to do a walkthrough for one of the investigator groups or something, it's always bits and pieces. It's never like the real story. Why
right.
is that?
Yeah, that's frustrating, right? Because you're right, like, that is one of the biggest frustrations. You could sit in a haunted location for 8 hours and get 1 EVP, or hear one little whisper, and you're like, "Ooh," and you're right, and we never get the full story, and I mean, that's what keeps us going, right? And I
Right.
think that's why we'll always be hunting spirits. But can you imagine how bored we would be if we went to a location and sat down and the spirit was like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and they told us their whole life story, and we'd be like, "Okay, well, I guess we're done here." You know? Mic drop, we're done.
So
Uh,
it's one of those be careful what you wish for kind of
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Be careful what you wish for, because 'cause we're gonna get the whole story, and then we're bored because 'cause we're like, "Oh, okay, well, that was a chatty ghost. They literally told us their whole life story, and we have nothing left to explore now. So now what?"
Or is it would just kick up too much drama, like, we would be their counselor, which
Yeah,
I guess in a way we kinda are anyway, but
that's another rabbit hole I'd like to go down, because I know that sometimes, I don't know about you, but me personally, the longer time that I spend in a haunted location, the harder the hangover. If I'm in a haunted location for 2 or 3 hours just doing a quick little session or whatever, I'm usually okay. But if I'm there for 8 hours or an overnight, forget it. I'm just a zombie for 2 or 3 days. Um,
Mhm.
so it kinda what was your question? I was just so excited by your
I forget too.
Yeah. There was
It's
an
one of those
interesting rabbit
rabbit
hole.
holes. It was
Yeah, all these rabbit holes. I forget what it was. I got so excited about your question. I don't
wow,
even remember now.
we're doing
Sorry.
good tonight. I don't know, it was something about, I don't know, I guess it's not it was one of those side things, but anyway, whenever
Yeah.
you do get these hangovers, what with the energy, how is it so draining like that? Is it that the other side just, like, pulls all that from you? Is it just the interaction with high emotion? Is it
Mhm.
dealing with lower frequencies? What exactly is going on?
All the above, and it's actually funny you say that because that just triggered, what we are and made me remember what your question was. If we were sitting talking with a ghost for 8 hours and then blah, 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 and we learned their whole life story,
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
we wouldn't be able to handle it. I don't think that our human brains would be able to handle it. I think that we would just explode. I think it would just be too much energy absorption. Because I personally feel, that again, this is just my opinion that when you're dealing with a haunted location, we call them ghosts for a reason. We kind of call them ghosts versus a spirit, because a ghost means that they're earthbound, they're grounded, so to speak. And so, yeah, they are a lower density and a lower vibrational energy that is not healed. And so they do have the ability to affect us mentally and physically. You've probably had that experience before where you walk into a haunted location and sometimes it affects you physically and you're like, "Oh, I don't feel so good. I have a stomach ache," or you get a headache.
Mhm.
And so that could just be something that you're feeling, or maybe you're picking up on you as a medium, that probably has happened to you where you're picking up on the energy of a spirit and, maybe they were plagued by migraines in their life. And so, you get a headache when you go into a location, or maybe they had digestive issues. And so, you get a stomach ache when you go into a location. So there's that. But I also think, to answer your question, that, yeah, I think the reason why we really suffer from paranormal hangovers is the length of time. Obviously, a lot of times we're there for 6 8 hours at a time. We're there overnight, we're up all night, we're not sleeping. Certainly there's that component, but it's also we're dealing with a lower level. And I don't like to use the word negative energy unless it's a truly negative energy. Most times, better than anyone, 9 times out of 10 when you visit a location, there's nothing evil
Right, right.
there. It's just a lower vibrational energy that is not healed, that just can't move on for whatever reason. And so we're picking up on their trauma, we're picking up on their unhealed drama, and that affects us, because we're energy too. Energy affects energy. And so that kind of goes back to the crisis of conscious that I was telling you about earlier. How as a Reiki practitioner, we have access, well, anybody really has access to the higher level healed entities of the archangels and the ascended masters and the Reiki masters. They're healed. They've completely ascended and they're here to help us and they make us feel fabulous. And how can I continue to do ghost hunting where I'm subjecting myself to lower vibrational energies that have the ability to harm you physically and emotionally? How can I continue to do that when I have access to higher level entities that really want to make you feel good and help you heal? So, in a roundabout way, hopefully that answers your question about the paranormal hangover. It's a two-pronged thing. We're just spending a lot of time in these places and we're
Right.
giving our own energy too. I mean, think of everything that we're doing. We're giving a lot of our own energy and we're absorbing their energy, their lower vibrational energy too.
Do you think that I know we've already discussed, like, healing, the other side, healing spirits and so forth. Do you think that there's some healing for us as well?
Yeah. As far as Reiki for humans?
Well, yeah, as far not so much Reiki, but, I guess with our interactions with spirits.
Mm. Wow, that's interesting. I've never been asked that before, but yeah, I would suppose so. If you were to extract the paranormal hangover out of it, because a lot of people just kind of hang on to that, or like, oh, I'm going to go ghost hunting when I have a paranormal hangover. And you're right. A lot of people don't think, oh, I'm going to go ghost hunting. I'm going to be healed and feel good. I think that's probably more on a mental level, me personally, because I think part of the reason why we go in there isn't just to set up shop, bring out all these, bells and whistles, record stuff and be like, all right, ghosts, we're out. See ya. We're there to
Yeah.
help them. Right. And by helping them, we feel good. And that's just, as human beings, that's what we like to do. We feel good when we make other people feel good. Um, Regardless if you're a living human or if you're a spirit or an entity in a haunted location. I think we go in there with the intention to help them, figure out their story, for them to tell us our story. And I think in the long run, we're there to help them, and that makes us feel good. So yeah, I think the answer to that is probably, yeah. Do we receive healing as humans when we go into haunted locations? Absolutely, because our intention is never to go in there to harm anything that's there. It's always
Mm.
to help them figure out their story, to learn their story, to get their story out there, to get that out in the public, because that's what a lot of the spirits want too. They want their stories known. And I think we help do that. So yeah, so I think in a way we receive that level of kind of mental and emotional healing just from helping out the spirits that are there.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just, the interaction with some of the spirits as well.
Mm,
Just for example, I was at Crescent Hotel, a couple years ago. I had just sold my property in Nashville at the time, and I was traveling across country to my new home in Las Vegas. But I was going through a whole lot of depression and didn't understand a lot of the transitions that was happening in my life at the time. Um, in Nashville, I had just gone through a big tornado, and
mm,
then the COVID shutdowns happened like right after that. So it was like back to back. And I remember all the way across, I wasn't working at the time. I guess nobody was working at the time, but
mm,
I had just sold the property and I decided to take a trip all the way across the US. And not to elongate the story, but I was very depressed. I was staying at the Crescent Hotel, and I know there's a story about Michael and all that kind of stuff there, the guy who jumped out the window. I didn't come in contact with that guy. I was sitting out on, there's like a backyard in a bunch of chairs, and you're overlooking this hillside, like mountains. The Ozarks, I guess, is what they are. And there's like a huge Jesus statue back in there that you can overlook. I don't know if you've ever been there or not.
I
Um,
have it. It's on my bucket list.
but I was really depressed, and I remember the sun was going down, and I was just thinking, what am I going to do now? I'm heading to Vegas. I'm going to start a whole new life. I have no idea what I'm going to do out there. And I started bawling. And
Mm,
when I started doing that, I was the only one out there. This lady appeared on my side, on my left side, and she had on this white gown, not like a dress gown or anything, but it looked like a nurse's gown or something. And she
okay.
said, her only words were, "You're lucky you get to walk away from here." And that hit me like you wouldn't believe. I walked away from there going, "She's right. Why am I sitting
Well,
here, in the drudges when," but I guess that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes
yeah.
these spiritual people on the other side can sometimes help us with little things like messages and things like that. I don't know if that's been your case or not.
No, I'm actually very glad you brought that up, because I hadn't really thought about that it is definitely a two-way communication street. You always think of us talking to them and they give us, like we mentioned earlier, little words here and there, and that's it. We're like blah, blah, blah to them, asking them a million questions and who are you and what we're, all these questions, and we get little blips back. And really, most of the time, what they're doing is just answering our darn question. But you're right. I've never had that experience, but I'm so glad you shared that, because you're right. They have just as much power to heal us as we can heal them. So that's an amazing story.
Yeah,
Um,
I've always wanted to go back and try to recommunicate with her,
yeah.
but yeah, it was at that moment, at that time, it was just, wow, looking back
Yeah.
at it.
Well, it's funny, before you told that story, my first comment to you was gonna be, I found it interesting, and we've all gone through depression and, dark nights of the soul, like we mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
I found it interesting that you found yourself in this, transitionary stage in your life, and you were depressed driving cross country, and you wound up staying in a haunted hotel, you know? Irony of ironies, you know what I mean?
You're
So
right.
I thought that was interesting. Your story took a totally different trajectory than what I was expecting, in a really good way.
Maybe I've lived a very strange life, just so you know.
Yeah, well, I need to meet you. I'm flying to Vegas tomorrow.
Really? I'll be
No, I'm
here.
just
I
kidding.
fly out Thursday. We should meet for lunch. It'd be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll make it out your way one of these days. Yeah, we definitely. I'm surprised. You know, we have a lot of friends in this is a side thing, but you and I have a lot of friends in common. How the heck did we not
I don't
meet
know.
until now? How has that not happened?
I
I
have
don't
no
know,
idea.
but it happened now, so we're good. Yeah.
All right, so back to back to
Sorry.
our rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Can our own energy dictate our afterlife and our ability to move on? I think I know the answer to that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I also think that a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but I think some people think that when you pass, that's it. Um, there is no afterlife. There's some people who think that there is an afterlife, and who how you died and the person you are when you died is who you become in the afterlife. I don't think that way. I think that when we pass on, we go through different healing layers too. I think that as long as we're energy, we're healing. And as long as we're energy, we're learning and growing. So even as non-meat suited spirits and energies, we're still learning and growing as we've passed on. So does that answer your question?
It does. Do you work with specific entities? Like, I know you mentioned angels. When you
Mm.
go to these haunted locations, do you have guides with you? Or, like, how do you protect yourself, I guess?
I don't have guides. You know, I know I've watched some of your other podcasts, and I know you've asked some of your other guests the same thing. You know, the psychics and mediums, and yourself. I
Mhm.
know you're a medium. Um, and you've asked them the similar question. Do you have particular guides that you work with? I don't. I do have archangels that I usually call in if I'm in a haunted location. I'm wearing my St. Michael's medal now. I usually call in St. Michael. He's one that I call upon. He's kind of my go-to when I go to a haunted location for protection. I don't have individual spirit guides. I have them, but I don't know who they are. For whatever reason, they refuse to identify themselves. I've asked them to, and they're there, they're helping me, but they don't want to identify themselves. I don't know why, which is frustrating for me as a Reiki practitioner, especially because when I'm helping to heal somebody, I want to call in my guides and their guides, and they're there helping, but they just don't always want to recognize themselves. But usually my go-to when I'm paranormal investigating in particular is usually the archangels. I always want to call in a higher level entity that's healed, that can come in and protect us. And I usually do a little ritual, like a lot of us do when we go into a haunted
Mhm.
location. I'll protect myself, a bubble of love and light and all that good stuff, and to wrap around everybody and the place in general while we're investigating.
So I'm gonna change the topic just a little bit. How do you use energy to heal yourself through Reiki? What is
Mm.
the process for those listeners out there? And can the listeners do this as well, even though they're not practitioners?
Well, I think everything is intention. We always talk about intention, intention, intention. Um,
You mean
and a
it's not the
lot.
$50 candle at the shop?
What's
I should
that?
It's not the $50 candle at the shop down the
Well,
way?
no. I mean, if it makes you feel better to have a $50 candle, then by all means go for it. And I think I've been just as guilty as anyone of buying a really fancy candle because it was
Yeah,
pretty and it smelled good, right?
yeah.
Yeah, let me help with that. But everything is intention. So can you heal yourself? I think so. Through the power of intention, the power of your mind, I think you can. I think that if you are Reiki attuned, and you have the Reiki ignitions, then I think you have a leg up. And you can heal yourself. That's just me personally, and I'm biased, because I am a Reiki practitioner. And a lot of people don't realize that the first thing you learn as a Reiki practitioner is to heal yourself. That's the first thing you learn. The intention with Reiki is not always to heal other people. The intention is to heal yourself. And the example I always use is when you're on an airplane and the masks come down. They always say, put your own mask first before you help somebody else.
Mhm.
Same principle applies with Reiki. The first principle is heal yourself first, because if you're not healed, you can't heal other people. right?
Right.
So I think as a Reiki practitioner, we heal ourselves. I sometimes heal myself every day. I do energy release because I work in an office with, dozens of people, and I'm absorbing energy just like anyone else. We absorb energy. You could go to the grocery store and absorb energy. So yeah, it's important to release that energy. Do you need to be a Reiki practitioner to do that? I don't think so. I think anyone can do a little release ceremony. It takes 5 minutes a day to just release the day and release any energies that you may have picked up throughout the day. But again, being biased because I am a Reiki practitioner, I think if you already have those ignitions and attunements, that it helps.
And what is your advice for going into a haunted location if you're dealing with a spirit that you feel like needs healing? How
Mm.
would you go about practicing Reiki for this person?
Well, the first thing is again, intention, right? Everything's always intention. So I usually, if I feel that there's an energy there that wants to be healed, I usually will have a conversation with it, a little private chit chat. And I'll say, hey, you don't have to be here. Of course, my first intention when I'm ghost hunting isn't necessarily going to go in to heal everything. That's not what ghost hunters want, because then if I'm healing all the spirits, and if all of us Reiki people are in there, all disappear, and they're like, well, now there's no haunted location and there's nothing to investigate. So, of course, that will never happen in every location.
Mhm.
But so me personally, I would just have a little side conversation. If I sense that there's an energy that is anxious and stressed out and wants to move on, I'd have a private conversation. And then I would just do like a little private ceremony where I would intend and I would send Reiki to that spirit. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to cross over. That's up to them. But the Reiki energy will at least heal them. It can show them the light. It can show them the love and the beauty of Reiki energy that is available to them. And hopefully the intention is that it's beautiful enough of an experience for them that they do want to move on. They want to cross over and not be stuck anymore. So that's how, and that hasn't happened too often, to be honest with you, because a lot of the spirits that I've encountered don't necessarily want to move on, but my intention is always to go in to hopefully find and seek them out and to give them Reiki to help them hopefully heal, if not cross over and move on.
Well, Katie, you are a lovely soul. We are already at the end of the hour. Can you believe it?
Where the heck
I
did
know.
that hour
I'm telling you, it's the rabbit holes.
go?
Every
Yeah,
time we go into rabbit holes, it's hour later.
love it.
It's that
Love it.
fast. But you're an author and you have some events coming up, right?
I do. So next Friday and Saturday, May 3rd and May 4th, I'm actually hosting a public ghost hunt. For anyone in the Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, it's the middle part of the state of Pennsylvania. I'm hosting a public ghost hunt with Shane Pittman and Josh Purvis, otherwise known as the Searchers. So I still have some tickets available for that if anyone's interested in that. And then I have, this is hyper local, but I do library presentations, and local libraries bring me in, and I do little chats. So I have something coming up June 1st at the Ole Valley Public Library, June 1st. It's a Saturday. So I'm doing a little paranormal one-on-one presentation there. And anyone who's interested, they can just go onto my website, Tamerlane Media. It's always updated for information on my services. And I'm on social media too, of course, like everybody else,
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook. So feel free to reach
And
out.
if somebody needs Reiki from you, they go to the Tamerlane. What is
Yeah,
it? Tamerlane?
tamerlanemedia.com /services. And just so people realize, I do tarot card readings and I do Reiki readings, and they both can be remote. A lot of people think you need to do Reiki in person. You don't. You can do remote Reiki. And you know that just as well as anyone. So, and I know you do, you probably do your mediumship. You can do that remotely too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. And
Yeah.
Reiki's the exact same way. So, so anyone who's interested, I can do remote Reiki for them too.
A few years ago, I had a lady from England do a Reiki session on me, and
Mm,
it worked wonders. I couldn't believe, at first I thought, no, this isn't going to work. She's all the way across the pond, right?
yeah,
No, it worked. Her
it
name was
works.
Helen.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you have.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I meant to ask you if you had any Reiki experience, and you do. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and then there's another girl here in Vegas, my little Vegas friend. She travels with me a lot on a lot of the Mysterious Adventures tours.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she allows me to say her name or not, but
Yeah.
some people are very private, you know.
Yeah.
But she does Reiki, and she does like cord cutting and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
And I've done a session with her, and she's really
Yeah.
great too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the core of what we do. We do cord cuttings and spirit detachments and stuff. I'm so glad that you enjoyed your Reiki experience. I it always warms my heart when I hear people say, "Oh, I love Reiki. It really helped me." I love hearing that.
It was weird because in paranormal, everyone thinks it's so woo-woo, but really it all ties in together. When you're working with energy is energy, like you said, and it all intertwines. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
can't
that
have
is
one
definitely
without the other.
yeah, absolutely. They are not mutually exclusive. They are mutually inclusive for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me tonight.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
loved
so much.
having
It
you
was a
on.
pleasure. What's that?
Maybe we'll work on some projects in the near future.
We do. Well, we definitely need to meet. Yeah, we need to meet and do some ghost hunting together, if nothing else. But yeah, absolutely, we need to work on something together in the future.
Well, thank you so much. You've been
Yeah.
listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained and mystical and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. Before I leave, there is a guest that was listening, and her name is Doof Doof Paranormal. She's from Australia, and she invited me to do an event with her in July. The event is in Virginia City, and it's the Magical History Weekend at Piper's Opera House, July 12th through the 14th. It will be a weekend of talks. I will be there. I'm not sure if I'm giving a talk or not. I'll have to find out. I think I'm on a panel. There's going to be haunted histories and a meet and greet. I'll be there with a lineup of other people. I think Shane Pittman's going to be there. I think I can't remember who's all going to be there. There's going to be a lot of people. I know Dave Schrader's going to be there. Dustin Perry's going to be there. Um, just a lot. It's going to be a good time. So look for where to sign up on my Facebook page. I will put that up later on tonight. Tickets are on sale now. Also, if you have a spooky tale, I'm doing a special project. So if you got a spooky tale and you want to share, send it to info@clthomas.org for a chance to share your story on the Gateway. And also, I'm going to be giving away a couple prizes for that. So send it to info@clthomas.org. The deadline for that is going to be May 4th. Thank you for listening. This is C.L. Thomas. Good night.